Some changes arrive politely. They knock on the door, they wait, they give you time. And some changes just pick up your whole world and drive it away. The day we left Tambaram, I remember sitting in the back seat of the van, watching my entire childhood shrink in the rearview mirror. It wasn't dramatic on the outside. No background music, no slow motion. Just boxes, tired adults, and a house that suddenly looked smaller because it was empty. But inside me, something cracked a little. At that age, I didn't have a word for it. Now I know it was loss. Not of things, but of a world I didn't know I loved until it was gone. If you think about it, our life is full of these invisible lines. Before, after. Before we moved, after we moved. Before that friendship, after that silence. Before we tried, after we gave up. Sometimes the line is big and clear. Sometimes it's just a Saturday afternoon when you suddenly realize you don't live in the same story anymore. This episode is about what happens on the other side of that line, about what it means to begin again when everything familiar has disappeared. Tambaram wasn't just a place, it was childhood in its purest form. We lived in a tiny 2-story apartment block, 2 floors, a narrow staircase, and a small crowd of children who believed the entire universe existed between those cement steps and the mottamadi above. We never needed permission. We never needed a plan. If you wanted to play, you just ran down the stairs. The game would find you. The church opposite our building rang its bells every morning and evening, and right in front of it, the church ground, our cricket stadium. We played until the street lights flickered on, until someone's mother screamed their name from a window, until bruises became part of uniform. Arguments over whether it was out or not out would echo louder than the church bell. That was the soundtrack of growing up. And that world had its own characters. The Pettikada Anna, who always slipped an extra thin mithai in our palm, even when we didn't have enough coins. The hire cycle shop, where we rented cycles by the hour, pretending we were kings of the road, while the owner yelled, 5 more minutes, last round. The saloon that gave all of us the same horrible haircut our parents insisted looked smart. Every corner was a memory. Every sound was familiar. Every laugh belonged to someone we knew. I thought it would last forever. Life was always happening outside. I hardly spent time at home. Home was where you went to drink water, change clothes, and fight with siblings. Life was out there. Cricket on the road until the street lights came on. Arguments about whether it was out or not out. 7 stones on days we didn't have a bat. Balconies as commentary boxes. Every compound wall was a boundary line. And then there was the mottamadi, the bare terrace. In every neighborhood, there's that one terrace where everybody somehow ends up. For us, that was the place where evenings quietly became nights without anyone noticing. We'd sit there, lying on the floor, counting stars we'd never really finish counting, talking about nothing and everything. Life felt small but complete. And then there were the power cuts. If you grew up in a certain time in Chennai, you know what a power cut is to a kid. It's not an inconvenience, it's an event. 1 second, the fan stops, the tube light clicks off, the TV dies mid-sentence, and in that 1 second of darkness, the street takes a deep breath and explodes into life. We used to play Iceboy, But for some reason, we called it Iceboy. The rules were loose, the excitement wasn't. The moment the current went, kids would run out of every house like someone had secretly blown a whistle. You couldn't see faces clearly, just silhouettes and giggles behind gates, someone counting loudly near a lamppost, someone else trying not to laugh while hiding right behind that person. The adults would stand outside, talking in low voices, waiting for the lights to return. And when the power finally came back, the entire street would groan in disappointment, as if someone had stopped a festival too early. That was Tambaram, a place where even a power cut was an adventure, a world that felt permanent. I didn't know it was temporary. One day, boxes, stickers, tape cutting through silence, whispers of adults trying to stay calm. I pressed my face against the van window when it rolled away. The church, the ground where we won World Cups no one recorded, the petti kada, the cycle shop, the saloon with a funny mirror, all of it slipped past like scenes from someone else's dream. It's strange how life changes, not with thunder, but with quiet turning wheels and roads you don't recognize. Nobody warns you about the ache of watching familiarity disappear inch by inch. We moved to Porur, another suburb of Chennai, but it could have been another planet. Our new house was bigger, nicer. In every adult way, it was an upgrade. But for me, it felt like someone had hit mute on the world. The house stood on a quieter road with empty plots and scattered homes. You couldn't hear kids playing, no arguments about one pitch catch out, no whistle of Iceboy starting in the dark, just wind. That first evening, I stepped outside and stood at the gate. In Tambaram, all you had to do was to come down and the game would find you. Here, nothing happened. The road looked too wide, the silence too big. The distance between houses felt like a warning. Don't assume you belong here yet. Inside, the house was echoey. New paint, new tiles, new everything, but no memories. I remember standing near the window, looking out at half-built houses and empty spaces, thinking, where is my life in all of this? Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, just a quiet confusion. The feeling of being a guest in your own days. We don't talk enough about that feeling. When you're not exactly sad, not exactly happy, just displaced. You're present, but your mind is still living in older rooms. You laugh, you talk, you eat dinner, but inside, there's a faint echo. This is not where I was supposed to be. That's the silent cost of change, not the boxes, not the logistics, but the way your heart takes time to catch up with your dress. Days went by. No friends, no cricket, no Mottamadi stories, no Iceboy festivals in the dark. Just school, homework, TV, sleep, repeat. Eventually, boredom did what courage couldn't. One evening, I stepped out, not with a plan, just to walk. I walked down the road, hands in pockets, kicking small stones, pretending I wasn't actually looking for anything. On one side, an empty plot with overgrown grass. On the other, a house with half-finished paint. And then, a little ahead, I saw a boy bent over his cycle, struggling with a loose chain. I slowed down. There's a very specific kind of nervousness you feel before talking to someone new as a kid. Your body wants to walk away, your heart wants to walk forward. I stood there for a second too long, watching him fight with the chain. And then somehow, I heard myself ask, "Do you play cricket?" He looked up, grease on his hands, a little line of sweat on his forehead. He paused for just half a second and said, "Only if you have the ball." That was it. No inspirational music, no handshake freeze frame. But something shifted as clearly as that day we drove away from Tambaram. A different kind of line. Before that question, after that question. We started with just the two of us. One bat, one ball, stumps made of whatever we could find. Then another kid joined, and another. Soon there were new arguments about whether it was out or not out. New running commentary, new nicknames, new promises, and new lies. Porur slowly started to sound like a life. Not the old one, a different one, but still a life. When you hear phrases like "begin again" or "start fresh," it sounds like a single decision, a big moment, a resolution, a dramatic turning point. But that's not how it felt. Beginning again for me wasn't one big act of courage. It was made of small things. The walk down the road, that one question, that one game, that one evening where laughter felt real again. It was when I stopped asking, "Why did we have to leave?" and slowly started asking, "What can I do with where I am now?" We often imagine courage as loud, brave, and visible. But sometimes courage looks like a quiet kid walking down an unfamiliar road and asking a stranger, "Do you play cricket?" As adults, we keep meeting that same feeling in different clothes. We move cities, we lose people, we leave jobs, relationships change shape, health shifts, dreams evolve. The locations are different, but the emotion is familiar. This is not the life I recognize, but it is the life I'm in. Nobody really prepares us for how often we'll have to reinvent ourselves, even if we live in the same city our whole life. And here's the strange thing. We think the story of our life is built from big moments. Exams, degrees, offers, weddings, parties, successes, failures. But the courage to begin again rarely shows up there. It hides in everyday choices. Do I step out today? Do I send that message? Do I show up at that class? Do I allow myself to be a beginner again at this age, in this body, with this history? Those questions are not loud. They are quiet, private, almost invisible, but they change everything. Today, as I sit here with a microphone, trying to start this strange new thing called a podcast, I feel a lot like that kid in Porur again. Standing at the edge of a new street, unsure who lives here, unsure who will respond, unsure if anyone will say, "Only if you have the ball." I don't know if 5 people will listen or 500. I don't know how many episodes this will become, but I know this. There are parts of my own life I want to begin again with. Parts of myself I've outgrown. Parts I've abandoned halfway. Parts I've postponed until some imaginary better time. Maybe you have those too. Projects that stalled, habits that broke, relationships that went quiet, dreams that were packed into cardboard boxes and left in some internal storeroom. If any of that feels familiar, then this space, Murmurations, is for you. A murmuration is when birds, usually starlings, fly together in these shifting, swirling patterns in the sky. Thousands of them, moving like one body, changing direction in a heartbeat, creating shapes that exist for just a moment and then dissolve. I've always been fascinated by that. To me, it feels a lot like our inner world. Thoughts, memories, regrets, hopes, all drifting, colliding, breaking formation, coming back together, nothing fixed, always moving. This podcast is my attempt to give some of those murmurs a shape, to sit with them, to see what they're trying to say before they disappear again. Not as answers, just as honest reflections. If you're listening to this, maybe there's a part of your life you want to return to, a version of you who used to be braver or kinder to yourself, or more curious, or simply more present. Maybe you've moved away from your own Tambaram into your own Porur, some new phase that doesn't feel like home yet. If that's you, this is your reminder. You don't have to rebuild everything in one day. You don't need a grand plan. You don't need perfect confidence. Sometimes beginning again is just one small walk down a quiet road, one honest question, one phone call, one journal entry, one attempt. Tiny acts of courage that no one applauds, but that slowly rebuild a life you can recognize. So this is me on my new street, holding a metaphorical bat and ball, a little nervous, a little hopeful. Thank you for standing here with me at the start line. Let's see what we can build together from here. Not fast, not loud, but honestly. This is Saki, wishing you a good night and an even better tomorrow.